And now part two with Noni sessions continue.
You know,
talking about
when
racially
when
assaulted.
when you have when you yourself, even as a member of an underrepresented group, gain social affluence, you forget that you are as well vulnerable to the same conditions that your most vulnerable of your community experience. And the assault was a clear reminder that if all of us aren't safe, none of us are safe. So that's how I came to run.
And you emerged out of was originally 7 candidates to be against the incumbent. So I have to ask you, um, first of all, why should people vote for you over the incumbent, over Lynette Gibson Medal?
Well, I have a multitude.
Or maybe ranked choice, maybe,
Well, ranked
That's
choice is gone. It's off the table. And we were
Because
very
you're the only
happy
two?
about that because we're the only two.
Interesting.
So it's a clear vote. You vote for the incumbent, you're voting for generic big box development that is based in cronyism and developer priorities. You vote for Noni Session for City Council District 3, you're voting for community. You're voting for solidarity. You're voting for a cooperative business model. You're voting for non-discriminatory police recruitment policies. And you're voting for a city council that wants to hear you and implement your needs. The very first thing we will be piloting is our neighborhood assemblies. And after we have proof of concept, we will be getting that recognized by city charter. So neighborhoods as precincts come together, set their needs, chart their future, and inform city council of the fights that we need them to fight for us, as opposed to the other way around where city council informs us after our destinies have been set, after the backdoor contracts have been signed, where we're locked into these deals with developers who do not love us, who do not care about us for years on end, and the end result of the projects, we get something like 4%, 6% affordable housing, and nonetheless, none of us can live here.
Now, talking about issues, you kind of touched on what I was going to ask you about. I wanted to hear you talk about the affordable housing problem in Oakland and what you thought about the measure on the ballot.
I adamantly support the measure on the ballot. What I find most important about the measure on the ballot, we already have some protect renters measures, but what they are dependent on are tenants knowing their rights. And this is always the way that working class people are taken advantage of, is us having to seek out our own rights when we know that those are structures that tend to be hidden from those who don't have the same kind of educational, political, and social access. What's different about Measure JJ is that landlords have to come to the city and justify rent increases. They have to come to the city and justify evictions, right? We fought for a database so that we could keep track of people's behavior, but the current sitting incumbent fought to water down the measure so that there was less accountability for landlords. But I believe, and the progressive coalitions that I work with believe, that if you do business in Oakland, you do business for the community. You don't do business for yourself. Period.
Now, what's your position on the maintenance or the retention of our sports teams?
I believe that we can divert money to the maintenance of our sports teams. I believe the Coliseum we have is a good place. I do not believe that a Coliseum should be built in West Oakland. We know that West Oakland and that's District 7, right? We know that that's District 3. We know that District 3, along with East Oakland, where the Coliseum is, which is District 7, this is prime land. This land is the jewel of Oakland. Right now, District 3 and District 7 receive the lowest impact fees of all the districts. One might conclude that has to do with the historic demographics of these areas. These are mainly our residents of color. These are mainly our working class residents, and it feels like a rhetorical strategy to many of us to continue to devalue that space by having lower impact fees than on the more quote-unquote affluent districts, right? So in that, people and city council has shown this attitude that they can make deals on our behalf that rhetorically benefit us, but actually in the end and displace us. So if we return to District 3 for a potential new stadium, that is a mistake. We are working with very limited space, though we do have enough space to affordably house all of our residents right now if we do not continue to sell it off to private entities.
I have a question because someone's going to ask me that in a comment if I don't ask it. Is that to say that you're opposed to the A's being at Howard Terminal?
I'm a person who's not an absolute yes and no person unless I have my facts, right?
Yeah.
If people want to follow up at noniforddistrict3.com with that question, I'm happy to answer that question. But that's the thing. Any changes we need to make in the city, any ways that we need to choose who we let in and how we let in requires thinking. Current city council takes the numbers that the mayor's office passes down. They take the numbers that the developers pass to them wholesale and accept them and make the decisions on that basis. There's very little independent research coming out of city council right now. We had to fight tooth and nail to get independent research on the no coal project, right? And it was still an arm twisting endeavor to get the current incumbent to vote no on coal. Interestingly enough, yes indeed. Interestingly enough, you may want to edit this or not, but apparently the incumbent's campaign is now spreading the misinformation that I have been recruited by the coal-supporting pastors to run for city council, when in fact her core allies were the coal-supporting pastors.
As a word, no zinny, as my regular viewers know, nothing that I put out gets edited.
Oh, I did not know that. Hi, Mom.
Now, shifting gears and talking about another issue, which is the Oakland Police Commission. What's your position on the Police Commission and what happened with Celeste Guap?
I also adamantly support Measure LL. But that's just the beginning, right? We know that really in other cities what has worked is moving towards a community policing model, right? And there are a lot of ways to arrive there. But one in particular that is going to be a top priority for me, whether I'm elected or not, is to shift the recruitment policies. Currently, recruitment policies constrain local recruitment on the basis of certain discriminatory categories, such as driving record and credit record. We know that is akin to redlining. That is unconstitutional, it's classist, and it's racist. And it makes sure that we can't have policing in our own communities. In addition, we need to incentivize officers living in our communities, right? So we know right now housing is so prime that even an officer cannot afford to live in Oakland. Rent would need to be at $1,200 for an officer to be able to afford housing. There are 0 units at that price right now, right? So if we incentivize officers as well as our teachers to live in Oakland with helping with down payments or helping with property tax, there are a lot of ways to do it. There are a lot of ways cities do it. We need to move towards a clear and committed community policing model. As well, officers need to have a human rights requirement so that they understand the nature of their choices and their actions when they interact with people on a daily basis, right? Now, as far as the Celeste Guap case, we know that young women and children are among our highest exploited citizens in the United States and in the world, right? And I am relieved that that story came out. I am less happy about the way that it's been handled. In addition, in the sense that it has constantly, first of all, the young woman, when women and children are exploited, they often blame the victim, right? So the young woman has been phrased in many different settings as the creator of her own conditions. But we know that's impossible because as a minor, you can't consent. Okay, whatever ways your poor little brain has been altered by these adults who exploit you, you cannot consent, right?
Right. You missed my 23-minute interview with her.
Oh, I'm gonna have to take a look at that.
Yeah, that's the only one that didn't
sweet
do that.
baby.
Yeah. The only one that did that.
And it's unfortunate that a sex, and they're calling it a sex scandal, which implies that she consents. A rape scandal is what it took to draw attention to the misconduct of the police department, given that we have the Riders case that still hasn't been settled from 20 years ago, right? The rape case. These are rapists, right? We don't seem to even be nearly as disturbed that they are also murderers, right? And I do not mean every police officer, but you know what? If I have a friend group of 5 people and 2 of them are rapists and murderers, it implicates us all. And I have an obligation to speak out against the people I associate myself with if I am in any way principled. Period. So that's my opinion of it.
What should be done? I'm going to ask this question. I'll just straight out ask it. If a business owner is trying to consider who to vote for, some business owners say to me that Oakland has become business unfriendly. What do you say to that?
I'd say that is propaganda talk, right? We need our business owners. That's the nature of a healthy economy in the United States. That's the basis of a healthy economy in California. What we don't need is generic big box development, because that too drives business owners out of business, decreases their revenue, and keeps them unstable, right? We know the way that big box and generic chain businesses move through communities and wipe out these small, individual, unique businesses. Right now, Oakland is a one-stop shop for large developers. What we need to be is a one-stop shop for our small and cooperative businesses to support and incubate our businesses until they reach that 5 to 6 year threshold where a business will continue to thrive for another 10 to 15 years. The only reason that Oakland may in fact feel business unfriendly is because it can be small business unfriendly unless the business itself is highly connected. Right? And then they become beholden to political interests instead of community interests, right? And there are lots of small business models that are really working well in cities such as Seattle that we need to employ here to create a full economy. A small and cooperative business model creates complete communities that are walkable, which will help us meet our environmental goals, which will help us stabilize our economy. So when tech money leaves us in 10 to 15 years, when there are the inevitable dips in the economy that are coming in 2 to 12 years, Oakland will have its own ecosystem that won't be hit so hard by these changes. As I mentioned to you, I'm third generation Oakland, so I've grown up to see all of these changes in Oakland. As a junior high schooler, downtown Oakland was a ghost town. As an elementary school kid, spending 8 hours unmonitored exploring the shipping districts, those warehouses have been empty for years because I was in there playing dangerously. But
Now, this is part 2. We're going to have part 3 in one moment.